All right, good morning, everyone. I know we're on a bit of a tight schedule today. We have lots of great things planned for you, so I'll make sure that we get started pretty promptly. I wanted to let you know a couple of things about today before we get started. First and foremost, we are going to be recording these sessions, so the sessions themselves will be uploaded to the Student Experience and Wellbeing course on Quarkus. So if there's something that we say today that you're like, oh, I don't remember quite what Rebecca said or what Esther said, like what can I reference later? It will be on the Quarkus course. We'll upload the different resources we talk about today, as well as our videos from today too. If you do choose to use your camera or your audio, again, we are recording. So if you do choose to, you acknowledge that we will be recording for today. But I do want to let you know that in different parts of the sessions, we will have breakout rooms. Those themselves won't be recorded. So don't worry about the breakout rooms. You're welcome to unmute and use your microphone during those sessions. We also encourage you during today to, feel free to ask questions, share thoughts. You're welcome to put them in the chat. And then we'll present the questions throughout the day. So I guess maybe I should add at this point, so my name is Rebecca. I always forget to introduce myself. I'm the coordinator of first year programs within the Office of Student Experience and Wellbeing. So my job is really to help, especially first year students or students who are new to UTSC, to help them in transitioning and navigating their university experience. And one of those big experiences is the exam period. Typically I work largely with first year students, but we acknowledge this year has been such a weird year that I think for many upper year students, there's been a lot of learning for a lot of things that maybe you already kind of know, but you're relearning a lot of pieces this year too. So, welcome if you're first year, upper year student staff, we're glad to have you here today. I'm also joined by, I'm going to point over to Anushia, who's one of our first year peers. Hi, Anushia.
Hi, everyone.
Anushia is going to be monitoring our chat today in our waiting room. And if you have any technical difficulties, you can send her a direct message. And we're also joined by Esther Chung, who's an academic and learning strategist from ANCC. Hey, Esther.
Hi.
Esther is going to be facilitating our next session, which is about online learning and preparing for online exams. But she's also here for our first session about the exam period. So if there are any questions about especially online exams or more academic related questions, Esther's here to support those pieces as well. So thanks so much for joining Anushia and Esther, and to everybody else who is here. Before we get started, I just wanted to offer some background about, why do we do Exam Jam? So Exam Jam is a program that we run twice a year. It's a week of workshops, events, and programs to help students do well during the exam period, and also to take care and practice self-care during the exam period. So we always do it in the fall exam period and the spring exam period. And we do this because we know that during the exam period, there's a lot of exam stress. And maybe I'm projecting from my own experiences as a student, the exam period is a particularly stressful period. I think, the regular academic year is stressful, but what makes the exam period particularly stressful is, maybe not feeling prepared for your exams, not knowing what or how to prepare for exams, knowing how to balance your time, and worrying that, if you don't do well on your exams, what's going to happen? So what are some of those outcomes? The other reason why we see the exam period as a stressful period is it's also pretty common for us to maybe decrease in our self-care during periods of academic stress. So, maybe during the school year, we don't feel like we're 100% at our self-care best, but during the exam period, it can be extra challenging when, you're worried about feeling totally prepared. So you're like, I'm going to stop working out, or I'm not going to make my own food. I'm going to order in all my food because I need more study time. And some of those things affect how we feel in terms of self-care. So for today, actually, that's, as we kick off our Exam Jam week, which is, again, a week filled of different events, and you can find out more on our Exam Jam page. Today, we're going to kick off that week with the things you need to know for the exam period. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how exams work, important considerations in case things go wrong during the exam period, and things that can help you to be successful. Afterward, Esther is going to walk us through, again, preparing for online exams. We're also going to be joined by the Wellness Peer Program from the Health and Wellness Center, who's going to be talking to us about managing exam stress and motivation. Then athletics and recreation is going to talk us through good snacks to eat during the exam period. There's a lot of literature to suggest that depending on some of the foods that we eat, that can help us with how we retain information and our cognitive processes. We'll also go through a healthy body for a healthy mind, which we're going to go through, a quick workout that you can do during the exam period to keep yourself, fit. But also there's a lot of literature to suggest that if you incorporate movement when you're studying, it helps with cognitive processes as well too. So the body is very interconnected and helps with our academic performance. Toward the end of the day, we're going to be joined by some upper year students who are also first year peers for our Get Ready With Me for Exams. And they're going to tell you from like a student perspective, because you're going to hear a lot from us today and you're like, okay, but in practice, how does this really work? The upper year students will tell you about how they themselves get ready for exams and maybe some of the challenges that they experience. And then lastly, we'll finish off the day with that community connect. So an opportunity for you to get to know other people who are here today. And really, because, socialization is a huge, that's a huge factor as you prepare for exams too. Staying connected to other people is so important. So you will have an opportunity to connect with others later on today. So like I said, all of today will be recorded and it will be uploaded to our Quarkus page. You, as a UTSC student, you should automatically have this on your dashboard. But if you don't, you can always go to uoft.me/UTSC student experience course. And that's where we upload, different workshops that we run during the school year and different recordings that we've made to you for you to refer to at your own time. And again, you'll be able to see those, like what we talk about from today there. One of the other things we'll be doing for today is thank you to Esther. She put together a mural for us. So a mural is a collaborative space where, you can share ideas, reflect on your experiences, and add, your thoughts, gifts. There's different things that you can add to this. So I encourage you to actually, because we're going to jump into the mural right away. If you go to, I have a very long link to how you can get there. And I think Esther's put it in the chat. You can also go to tinyurl.com/examjam2020 mural. So that might be a little bit easier for you. And the first thing we're going to do is pin where we are in the world. So if you go to mural, you'll be prompted to this page, and then you can type in your name. Clearly, I made this before and I typed in my own name. And one of the first activities we have is a world map. You can zoom in or out when you're on the mural page, or if you go to the dashboard on the right side, you can click through the different activities that we have. And throughout the day, you can do the different activities at your own pace. We'll prompt you to do them as well too, but you're welcome to interact with them throughout the day. So for where you are in the world, you can zoom in on the map. You'll see that there are different location pins. You can take your pin it where you are, and then you can write the city that you're in. This is a fun way for us to kind of see where everybody is coming from in the world. So feel free to do that right now, and then we'll circle back and we'll check in on our mural to see what everybody has said in the meantime. So speaking of where we all are in the world, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the land that I'm situated on, and which is also the same land that the UTSC campus is situated on, because I live pretty close to campus. So this is the traditional home of the Huron-Wendat, the Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and the Mississauga of the Credit River. And I'm so grateful to live, as you can see in this picture, the UTSC campus is a beautiful campus, and much of Scarborough is a beautiful green space. And I'm so grateful to live on and work on such a beautiful land, which has been the home for my family too. It's my ancestral home since the early 1800s. So we've been here for quite a long time in Scarborough. And I do acknowledge that itself has come at the cost of the traditional hosts of this land. Although I do give thanks, my family came here when seeking safety from our home country. And I'm so grateful that my family was able to live on such a beautiful space again, but also a place that was safe for my family too. And this is a traditional custom of many Indigenous groups, but we also a custom that we do at the university in terms of acknowledging land. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit to everything you need to know about the exam period. Again, feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we'll pause a little bit toward the end of my session. I only have a few minutes here where I wanted to share some important pieces with you, and then Esther will switch gears into preparing for exams. So what we'll talk about today is really what the exam period is, exams and exam expectations, what a petition is and how to do that, and then the resources that are available to support you during the exam period. What I really hope from the rest of this day that you take away is that you're not alone. I also do want to preface at this point too that if you hear any funny noises from my audio, I have a very small puppy who likes to sit by my feet during my presentations. So you might hear some puppy noises during this presentation, which I apologize for, but she's too cute and I let her away with it. All right, so let's talk about the exam period. The exam period, as you may know, will begin December 10th and run until December 22nd. What you might not know is actually just before the 10th, the 8th and the 9th is the study break. So there are no exams during the study break. And that is because, your classes end on the 7th. The university gives you a bit of a buffer, a small buffer to be able to prepare for your exams. And then the exam period itself goes from the 10th to the 22nd. To make sure that you're on top of your academic dates, the registrar's office does have an academic dates page on their website, which is where I pulled this information. So I encourage you, it's always good at the beginning of the school year, the beginning of the semester, to take a look at these dates and to put in your calendar, and it'll help you to prepare. The exam schedule itself doesn't come out until the middle of the semester, which you maybe saw with excitement in the middle of the semester, but you can also get that on the registrar's website as well. So exams are an opportunity for your professor to assess what you've taken away from the course and take place at the end of the semester. Many of you may have grown up in academic systems where you have very large comprehensive exams at the end of the school year. Typically, within our system, these exams are at the end of the course. So if you're taking a half-year course, at the end of that course, or at the end of a full-year course. But they happen in two different ways. They can be a cumulative exam or non-cumulative exam. And cumulative means that you're going to be tested on everything that happens in the course, versus a non-cumulative might be a portion of the course. So maybe you're taking a class where the professor says the exam will only cover what we talked about from the midterm until now, or you might have a course that the professor says, we're going to talk about everything. And that might shape how you prepare for your exams too, right? Sometimes your professor might let you know there'll be a heavy emphasis on the content since the midterm until now with some information from before. And again, that might help you to think, I better focus on some pieces more than others, but it will still be important to focus on all aspects of the course. So that's a good, maybe again, I'm sharing my experiences where I had no idea when I was in first year, the difference between these two, but it made a difference in helping me to prepare. So that would be if you're not entirely sure about if your exam is cumulative or non-cumulative, it's a good thing to check in with your professor or teaching assistant to see if, what you need to be doing to prepare. Another important note about exams is that unlike your coursework and your midterms, which is largely run by your professor, this is also administered by the university. So that means if you miss an exam, it's not always the case that you can just go and talk to your professor about this. You'd have to actually go through the university. There's formal processes for if you have issues with your exams. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit later. So when you're preparing for your exams, I'm not going to cover this too much because Esther is going to cover this quite a bit more. There are different formats to exams, and especially in this online environment, we do have two primary types of exams. We have online exams and take-home exams or take-home tests. And the large difference there is online exams are typically synchronous. You're writing it at the moment you're given the exam, and you're given an amount of time to do it right away on the spot as a group, versus a take-home test is you would have been given the test and there's a submission deadline. For exams, there are different types of formats or questions that could be included, such as multiple choice, short answer, essay, if you're solving mathematical solutions. And that's important to get a sense of maybe if your professor is kind enough to let you know what the format generally might be, that would influence how you're going to prepare for your exams as well too. So and again, that's a little bit more from the ANCC side or Academic Advising Career Center. They can provide support and how do you prepare for different types. So these pieces are really important to know. Is your exam going to be an online exam or a take-home test? Might affect how you prepare for exams. what types of questions are going to be asked, and if it's cumulative or non-cumulative, so that you get a sense of maybe what you need to know for your exam planning. So the first step really in doing any of this is figuring out your exam time and your exam schedule. On the registrar's office website, you can find the exam schedule. Like I said, it usually comes at about mid-semester. So if you're thinking about the spring, you'll probably find out in February when your exams are. And as you can see on this website, it will tell you your start time, your end time, whether or not it's a take-home exam or an online exam. But something really important to note is, like based on the format, you'll have to be aware of like when the deadlines are. So if it's a take-home exam, where it says end time, that's your submission deadline. That's not necessarily, like, that's not when you're going to get the take-home exam. That's when your exam has to be submitted. So that's something to be aware of. So if you see that you have a take-home exam that's for Tuesday, December 22nd at 3 o'clock, Eastern Standard Time, of course, that's when you need to make sure that your take-home exam is submitted. And your professor will let you know a little bit more about what the submission guidelines are. So that usually comes more specifically from your professor. Your online exam on the other hand, has a start time and an end time, because that's the period that you would be writing your exam. It's like everybody's doing it together at the same time. So for example, if the example I've highlighted here is December 19th from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. That's an online exam where everybody's going to be doing that together. So those just are some important things to know. When you're doing your exams, there are policies that you need to follow in terms of making sure that you follow the code of conduct. This is much more elaborately explained on the registrar's office website, so I definitely recommend that you review this as well. But there's some pieces I didn't fully know until I was about to write my first final exam. Now, some of these things are also they differ between being online and in person. So I would recommend that you follow the guidelines that your professor has given you. But generally, you would need to provide your T card for identification. So when you're in person, you show your T card and you sign a form that you consent to who you are. In an online environment, that's a little bit different. You log into your Quarkus system, which is in a way an identification, and maybe prompted to provide some identification in your exam. It's similar in person and online. It's important that you clear your desk of any belongings or personal belongings or anything that's an unauthorized aid or electronic device. And that could be your cell phone as well too. So, it's important to make sure that if you are in an exam that's proctored in any way, or if it's in person, to demonstrate that you don't have anything on your desk that would maybe compromise the integrity of your work. That's an important piece. Of course, where possible, if you have back-to-back exams, this is a little bit harder to do, but make sure to arrive early for your exams, especially if it's an in-person exam. You want to make sure that you're there, 15, 20 minutes early so that you can get in, settle in, find your seat. But similarly for online exams, arriving early to make sure that your technology is working, right? I'm sure that that's a stressor for all of you. I get that stressor even just when I'm going to run exam jam workshops. I'm I hope my internet works today. So making sure that you arrive early to your exam to check your technology. And my pro tip there would be, if you have a hard line, plug your computer directly into the wall so you don't have to, or into the Ethernet port, so you don't have to worry about your Wi-Fi. That's my secondary recommendation there. If you're late for an exam, there are some different factors depending on how they might decide what they can do, depending on how late you are for an exam, maybe what the reason is. You will not be given any more time. So if you have a 2-hour exam and you're late, you have the balance of whatever's remaining in that time if they let you write. If you're really late for the exam, you might have to just petition for a deferral. You may not be able to sit and write the exam. So that's where, triple check the exam schedule so you know exactly when your exams are, and making sure that you budget that time so you get there a little bit early. And the last thing that, important for us to remember during exams, especially online, is that we shouldn't be communicating with anybody else during the exam. So what's really important is if you are living at home or have roommates, letting your family know that you're going to be writing an exam and that you can't have anybody coming into the room when you're writing the exam, letting them know what's going on and exactly what the duration of your exam is. I think, a really important piece is to think about, many of us have like group chats for our classes, but making sure that the content in those group chats align with academic integrity, and you're not participating, especially you want to make sure that, like, if you're in a group chat, it follows academic integrity. And of course that's not happening during an exam, because that itself would be an academic integrity violation. If you have questions about academic integrity, I found this on the Academic Advising and Career Center website, and the Student Experience and Wellbeing course also has more information on academic integrity. It's a very scary concept. I think I spent most of my undergrad being afraid of, like, what if I accidentally do something and I don't mean to? These are the general types of offenses. So plagiarism would be, you're using ideas or information from somebody else. For exams, I think the most common thing that we see is unauthorized aids or unauthorized assistance. So, bringing something to your exam that you're not really authorized to bring. And in in-person exams, that was even, there are guidelines about what kind of water bottles you can bring, right? To make sure that, someone has a written on, like written cheats on the labels of their water bottles. So it's really important to make sure you go through that list of what's allowed to be in your exam. And hopefully your professor has shared that with you as well. The other pieces to take into account are like forgery and falsification, so making false statements. Personation is when you have somebody else do it for you. That's a serious academic offense, of course. Concocting is when you use false data or provide false references, and self-plagiarism, using work that you've had in other courses, for credit. And that's more, some of these pieces might be more relevant for synchronous exams or for take-home exams. So, things to be cognizant of when you're preparing for exams. So I only have a couple more pieces that I want to share with you, and then I'm happy to take questions. The most important things I want you to know is, some of this information can seem pretty scary. You're like, oh my goodness, like, I think my biggest fear when I was, writing exams was, I'm not really good at waking up in the morning. And I'm like, what if I oversleep? What if I'm not feeling well? What do I do? I had an exam conflict one year. My exams were at the same time, and I didn't quite know what to do. So there are many different things that you might be wondering, like, what if my exams conflict? What if I'm in a time zone and it's in the middle of the night and it's just not possible for me to, to write an exam during that hour? What if you have a technology issue? That's probably a big worry that you have. Or what if you miss an exam? And really, what do you do if you need help? Maybe you've experienced a personal difficulty in your life that's affecting how you can do your exams, or you just need some support. So first and foremost, about exam conflicts, there are different types of conflicts that you can have during the exam period. Like I said, you can have 2 exams at the same time, or maybe more. That's simultaneous exams. If you have 3 exams in 4 consecutive time slots, so imagine, like, I think we run 3 exams a day. Imagine that all of your exams were like one after another. That's a petition that you can make as well. Religious observance. So if an exam falls during a time of religious observance for you, whether that's like like a high holiday, or maybe like a particular day of the week where you practice, you can request a petition there as well. And new for this year, because we know that many students are coming from many parts of the world, is time zones. So if you are not living in in Canada right now, if you're living abroad and your exams do not fall within 7 a.m. to midnight, you can request a petition to write in another time, given the challenges that it may present with writing in the middle of the night. So to be able to do a petition, you go to the e-service website of the registrar's website. Many of these petitions, of course, have a deadline for November 25th. If you miss this deadline, I think it never hurts to ask and see what still can be done for you. But it's important to be cognizant of the deadlines as well. The other type of petition that you may need to be thinking about in case something goes wrong is if you have a technology issue during an exam. So like we said, that many of the exams are take-home assignments or take-home tests where you're given a timeline and you have to submit at a particular time. And some of the synchronous exams too require a submission as well. If you have a technology issue, like your internet goes out, or the page won't load. It's really important that you take a screenshot as soon as possible. So, if you have a Mac laptop, like there are some shortcuts to being able to do that, or on PC computers, there's a print screen button on your keyboard as well. Or even, if it's something that your computer's frozen, take a picture with your phone or something. But capture something to support your petition. So a petition process is when you make a formal request to the university to review your circumstances, and oftentimes you need to provide some supporting documentation. So, if you, like we said earlier, if you're living in another time zone, you need to provide some supporting documentation that says, this is where I am right now. Similarly, if you're having a technology issue, it would be helpful for your petition to have some supporting documentation, like screenshots of what happened. We'd also recommend that right away you email this information to the IT student help desk. One, so that maybe they can help you so you can get that in right away, but also that creates a record to demonstrate at this time you did try to make that effort, right? So when the university is reviewing your petition, they can say, oh, you know what, Rebecca has this picture of, her computer was frozen, or she was getting like a timeout error, and she emailed the IT at help desk right away. This leads us to believe that this is a legitimate petition that she's putting forward as well. So it helps your claim. So again, in this case, what we would recommend is take a picture, email the help desk right away, connect with your professor to let them know. If your professor doesn't accept your work, that's when you can formally go to the e-service website and do a petition. Now, you might also be in a circumstance where maybe you fall ill. The university wants you to try your best to be able to write your exam at that time. And we partly say that because deferred exams are actually quite difficult. If you need to do them, it's good to be able to write them at another time. But oftentimes deferred exams take place much later. And when you haven't been engaging in the course content, if maybe your exam is scheduled for December and your deferred exam is in April, you might forget a lot of that information, and it might not, you might not perform as well as you would like to as well. You also might do a deferred exam when you have all of your other exams in the spring. So that means you would maybe be doing, 6+ exams, or, depending of course on your course load. So deferred exams can be a difficult option. So we really encourage students to avoid as much as possible. However, you might be in a circumstance where it's really just not possible for you to write an exam, or would really compromise your ability to perform on an exam. So, if you were sick, maybe the loss of a loved one, those are all very fair reasons why you wouldn't be able to write an exam. So again, for deferred exam, you do need to go through the e-service website on the registrar's website, and typically within 5 business days of that exam. So, before or after the exam to be able to request the deferral. The university is quite supportive. If there was maybe a reason why you couldn't within the 5 days, I would still encourage you to go through the process and see what the university could do for you. The formal policy is that it's within the 5 days of missing your exam. I did want to add that, like we said, that a good petition has supporting documentation. And depending on the circumstances that you're going through, like we said, like maybe a health circumstance or, maybe a personal circumstance, there are many resources on campus that could help to provide you some supporting documentation. So some of the support that is available on campus, for academic support, the Center for Teaching and Learning offers a lot of, and this maybe isn't necessarily for supporting your petition, but wanted to put it here anyway about the types of resources that you can access. The Center for Teaching and Learning has an online course on Quarkus where there's a mock exam tool, facilitated study groups, drop-in study centers. I would encourage you to check that out as well. Accessibility Services offers support for students registered with accessibility with a registered disability. And there's a wide range of what that means, whether that's short-term or long-term disability. The Academic Advising and Career Center offers support in terms of study skills, understanding university policies. So I would recommend that you connect with them as well. And the Registrar's Office, again, is really what helps to administer these policies and processes. So again, for example, maybe you're submitting a petition and say you're registered with Accessibility Services, they're aware of maybe, maybe, for example, you have a chronic health condition that sometimes has periods where you're not well. and they know this, they might be able to support you with some documentation that says, you know, I know Rebecca has a chronic health condition, and during this period, she was not well enough to do her exam. That's, without going into too much detail, usually in those circumstances, they're able to provide those letters of support. Or similarly, if you connected to another member of the university, maybe from some of these other areas, they could offer a letter of support. Similarly, when you think about maybe it's a personal circumstance, I didn't mention it here, but even if you live on campus and maybe something happened where you had to report something to campus police, oftentimes campus police can support with those letters of support as well too, or the Health and Wellness Center can let this, say that, Rebecca and I connected on the day of her exam and she really wasn't, she had symptoms of, XYZ and that's why she couldn't write her exam, or, maybe they can speak to if you're experiencing some personal concerns. So there are a lot of resources to support your petitions, but they're also here to support you and to make sure you're doing well during the exam period. So my SSP is my student support plan, which is a 24/7 available all the time in many, many different languages and around the world. And it's staffed by different counselors that you can connect to for support. The Good to Talk telephone line is a great resource for support. Like we said, the Health and Wellness Center. And if you live on residence, the Residence Life team is a great support for you in terms of, like after hours if you need help, and of course during the workday too if you need support. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it's really important to connect with your family, friends, and loved ones during this time too, especially when it's a particularly stressful time. If they know, it can be helpful if they know what you're going through so you can lean on them for support too. All right, so before I get to some questions, the last thing I'll say here is, there are many resources to help you in preparing for the exam period. The Student Experience and Wellbeing course is one of them. Like I said, the Center for Teaching and Learning has an academic learning support course. CLN, the Career Learning Network, has calendars with different events, workshops, and appointments like for today, where you can look into different supports that you might need. And there's also an old exam repository through the library where you can see what exams have looked like. Now, that depends on who the professor was in previous years and recognizing that these were designed for in-person exams, but that could offer you an opportunity to test what you know in preparing for exams. So I'd encourage you to check it out. All right, so if I were to summarize, to get ready for the exam period, make sure you know your exam time, you understand your format and expectations, create a study plan, develop a self-care plan. So think about, how are you going to take care of yourself during the exam period? Who are you going to connect with? Who are your support systems? And what are the campus supports that you might need during the exam period? So thank you so much for letting me share. I know I'm getting into Esther's time here. Anusha, do we have any questions from the group that we would want to address before our next session?
No, Rebecca, there are no questions in the chat.